to today's Chumash. Let's go to today's Chumash, and I'm going to bring it up here on the screen. Okay, so today is Monday, the second portion for the Parsha Vayechi. By the way, it's the last Torah portion in of this whole first Chumash. So the last big Parsha, grand finale, ending of everything we've been learning. We've been starting from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the forefathers. We started from actually Adam and Eve, and we learned about Noach. Then we went to Abraham, all in great detail for the life of Abraham, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And finally, we're heading towards the end of the first book, which is going to end with the passing of Yaakov. So ve'enei Yisrael kavdu mizaykan. The eyes of Israel became heavy with age, right? That's normal. What happens when people get old? And obviously, la yuchlu lirois, he couldn't see, so he couldn't really see well. And we learned in yesterday's Chumash that Yosef had brought his two sons, whose names were Menashe and Ephraim, to his father to bless them. So he drew them near to him. He put them next to his father. Yishak lahem, and Zaydi Yaakov kisses them. Chabik lahem, and he hugs them, he embraces them, and he gives his two grandchildren there a kiss and a hug. So this Yosef, the viceroy of Egypt, is bringing his two children to his Zayda, to his father, their grandfather, in order for him to hug them and kiss them. But Yomer Yisrael, Yosef, he's going to ask for a blessing. So Yisrael says to Yosef, he says, this is a very special moment in life. He says, it's shocking that we're even here today because I could not even entertain in my mind a possibility that I would even see you. I mourned your death for 22 years. It did not even enter my mind that I would even see you, my son. I thought that was it. It was over. I will never see my son again. And here we are. God is showing me your children, my grandchildren, the offsprings of that son who I never even imagined that I would ever in my life see. He says Yaakov is, it's an unbelievable moment in life. He's telling his son Yosef that we're at right now. I never imagined in my wildest dreams. I couldn't even expect or think a possibility that I would see you. And here we are, and I'm seeing my grandchildren. So he takes his two children that he just gave to his father to hug, and he kissed them. He puts them back in order to set them up to get the blessing. And Rashi tells us, how do you give a blessing? So he says that he's going to put the older one by Yaakov's right hand and the younger one by Yaakov's left hand. You always know, tzaddik, everything the righteous man does is exact and detailed. And rightfully so, he's going to put the older, the Bechor, the firstborn, by Yaakov's right hand, and the younger one by his left hand. And as he's backing up from his father, setting up his children to get the blessing from dad, from their grandfather, he bows out of respect to his father. So Yosef takes both of them, as I'm saying. It's Ephraim b'yaminoi, Yisma Yisrael. It takes the younger one, Ephraim, in Yosef's right hand, which is the left hand of Yaakov. That's Menashe b'shmoil mimin Yisrael, and he takes Menashe, the older one, in his left hand, which is his father's right hand. Right? Whenever you're facing someone, your right is to the other person's left. So he's taking the older one in his left hand, so it should be in his father's right hand. And he comes to his father and says, here, bless my two children. Now, if you remember from Chumash in the previous day, we learned that there was a special bond between the younger one, Ephraim, and his grandfather, Yaakov. There was a special bond between that grandson. The younger grandson was closer to Yaakov. He always learned Torah by his grandfather. He had a special connection with the grandfather. Sometimes the grandchild has a special connection with the grandfather. The holy giant Yaakov had a special connection with this special boy. So what does his grandfather? What does the grandfather do? Yisrael stuck out his hand, and he crisscrossed his hands. He did not follow what his son Yosef was trying to do. Yosef was trying to set up the older one by Yaakov's right hand and the younger one by his left hand. So the grandfather says, I know what's going on, and he does the opposite of what his son tried to do. He sends out his hand, but Yashes al Reish Ephraim, and he sticks his right hand on the younger one, Ephraim. Who at Sawyer, Besmoile al Reish Mashin, puts his left hand on the older one. Shikal as Yadav, he guided his hands deliberately, specifically, smartly, ki Menashe Bechar, because even though Menashe is the firstborn and anybody would have naturally done that, he says, no, this is not what's happening. He switches the hand. Vayevarech es Yosef, Vayomer, and he gives Yosef his son a blessing. And he says, and this is very famous because these are probably the most famous blessing in the Torah that a father gives his sons. And it all comes from here. This is where it comes from. The most famous blessing when a parent wants to bless his child. Whenever I go to my father on Yom Kippur and he gives me a blessing, and some parents bless their children every Friday, and some parents bless their children always, but specifically before Yom Kippur, they always say this blessing that Yaakov is going to give his son Yosef and his grandchildren. So Yaakov blesses Yosef, and he says, Yosef, God, before who walked Avraham and Yitzchak, my grandfather Avraham and my father Yitzchak, as a God who took care of me, sustained me. Yaakov says, I had this miraculous life that God always took care of me. From the beginning till today. Hamalach Hagoyel Oisi is so many famous songs in these words. The angel that protected me, Mikolra, from any bad happening. There were so many parts of my life where I was in such dangerous situations, and the angel, I had a guardian angel that protected me my whole life, which is obviously Hashem, protected me through this guardian angel. Yivarech Hasana Adam should bless these children, these young children, my grandchildren that are standing in front of me. Yikare behem shemi, and that my name should be called upon them. B'shem avos, in the name of my fathers. They continue the lineage and the name of me and my grandfather and my father Avram and Yitzchak. V'yidgu l'roi b'kerev haaretz, and may they, like fish, populate. May these two little boys here become giant, mighty nations like fish. May they fill the land in their midst like fish, fill the sea. That's how much these two little boys that are standing in front of me should become. So Yaakov says, I always had this angel that came to me, the guardian angel that protected me, Rashi says, and may this angel continue to be with these grandchildren. And they should multiply and become this tremendous mighty nation, a beautiful blessing that Avraham is blessing Yaakov is blessing his grandchildren. Now, just one more thing. Rashi says, or actually someone sent me a text, that the greatest thing a father wants in life is that his children should continue to follow in his good ways. That's the greatest blessing, the nachas that we have from our kids. There's no greater blessing that a person can have in life. Like we spoke about yesterday, that children should follow the path of Torah and mitzvahs that their father set out. So that's it, short chumash today. Basically, the blessing and the switching of the hands that Ephraim and Menashe. Now, Yosef in tomorrow's chumash is going to object to what his father did. He says, Dad, what are you doing? Why are you switching your hands? And obviously it has a lot of connotation and meaning behind it, and he's very scared of it, but we'll learn about that tomorrow. Any questions or comments on today's chumash? No, we good? Clear, straightforward, every good? We have all the scholars in the class today. No one has any questions. Okay, fine. Continuing along. Say it now or hold your peace. Okay. Continuing right along to today's Tanya. We're going to talk about the Rasha today. We're going to talk about the wicked person. Oh boy, so we got to talk about the Rasha. So we said in the beginning of our class, we started off saying what's a tzaddik. And we said how great the tzaddik is. How amazing the tzaddik is. And how there's a tzaddik that's perfect. And then that's almost nobody's that tzaddik. And then there's the lower level tzaddik, which the bad is just sleeping. It's dormant in him. It's sleeping. He has it, but it's not awake. It's so minute that you don't even know that it's there. You can't even tell that it's there unless you look very special ways. But today we're going to go to the opposite extreme. So join me, my friends, as we discuss the Rasha today and we learn about who is this Rasha, who is this evil person. So here's some of the questions you have to ask. Let's just start. Let's get our mind thinking. Is a Rasha someone who is always bad? Or is a Rasha someone, a Rasha, right? Rasha means like a bad person, is someone that sometimes does something that's bad. Who's a wicked person? You know, you have in the sun, the 4 sons. The son is the Rasha. In the Haggadah, one of the sons is the Rasha. He's the wicked person. So when you say he's the wicked son, what does that mean? He's always doing something. He sometimes does something that's bad. He always does something that's bad. What defines a wicked person? And what kind of bad things does he do? right? What kind of bad things does he do? Does he do bad things physically, like terrible things physically? Does he do bad things mentally? Is he bad inside? It's an inner struggle that he's bad. That's what makes him bad? Or does he have to actually do bad things? So that's what we're going to address today. Let's see in Tanya, we're going to address the different levels. We're going to go to the opposite extreme. We explained the tzaddik realm of things, and we know that tzaddik is a very high, lofty level, which very few people reach. And now we're going to go to the opposite extreme, and we're going to learn about the Rasha, the wicked person. So, Zelu Umazeh, the Tanya starts off today saying, look, just equate it one opposite the other. Just like you had by a tzaddik, the perfect tzaddik who overcame, turned his evil into good, literally changed it, which is almost nobody. You also had a tzaddik which never turned his evil into good, but he's so much good that you don't recognize the evil that's within him. The same deal is with the Rasha. You have a Rasha of a Toivlai. You have a Rasha who knows good. He's a wicked person, but he knows good. And Lumas Tzaddik Virale, who's similar to the tzaddik. So you have an imperfect wicked person, just like you had an imperfect righteous person. You could have it on the other extreme. What does it mean? What's the guy? So how do we explain? We explained very well what does it mean, the imperfect righteous person. But what does it mean to be an imperfect wicked person? So it's explained just like the by the tzaddik. I know this means that the good that's in the godly soul, right? Where's the godly soul? It's in the brain. Remember, we said in the body, where's the main part of the godly soul? It's in the brain. And it's in the right ventricle, the right side of his heart, which is not so much blood. That's where the main location of the godly soul starts from. So that godly soul is kafuf ubatel. He's bent over, he's subservient, and he's nullified. He's forced to follow Lagabi hara, regarding the wickedness, shaklipa shabachala smali, of the husk of the one who hides God. That's in the left ventricle. He is in charge. He's in charge. He is bossing around. He's in control and bossing around the godly soul. Just like the other day, last two classes, we've been explaining how the godly soul took over and controls the wicked soul. Today we're learning that the ego and the selfishness and the hiding of God took control and went over the godly soul. So this is, whoa, it's a pretty serious thing. But he's saying, look, there's many different levels. There's not just like one level of yes or no. Did your wicked soul take over your godly soul? Sounds like a pretty sad state. The guy's in a pretty tough situation. He says, look, everybody, there's a million different levels of wicked you could be. How much is your ego? So this person is ego-driven, centric person. But how much? How much is he driven? Is he total chazer? Like, is he total covering godliness wherever he goes, or a little bit? So he says, look, just like by the tzaddik, it could be many different levels. How control his animal soul's control of his godly soul. There's so many different levels. Remember, we said there was 18,000 different kinds of tzaddiks. So the same thing you could have by wicked. You could have thousands and thousands of levels of how much in control is the animal over the godly soul. The Inyan kamus ve'echos. It could go in many. It could be quantity. It could be quality. In other words, how often does it happen? Maybe it only happens once in 10 years. I'll give you an example. To me, I like this example. I called up a guy once, and he answered back very, very tough, very not like, he must have been in a bad mood or something happened bad that day. I'm sure it happens. I'm sure I do it a lot of times myself and other people do it, but he lost himself and answered very, very, I want to say like, I'm afraid of that guy now because I'm afraid he's going to do it again, right? There's a guy, I remember this guy, a guy that came to shul a while ago. He would come and he would start screaming at everybody. And I wouldn't talk to him. So he would get very angry at me. Why are you not talking to me? I said, I don't know how you're going to start screaming at me. How often are you going to lose yourself? So now I'm scared. You know what I mean? Like a person, you're not in control of yourself. You're letting your gluttonous, selfish-centered person take control. You're not disciplined. So I don't know when you're going to let out. So if it's a person that does it every day, right? God, like in a family, you have a father who starts screaming at his kids every day, very bad, or a spouse. The spouse is scared of him because he doesn't know when he's going to lose himself. He's not in control of himself. His ego is control of his control of his godly soul. so there's a constant fear you actually have of that person, right? This is me internalizing this. It doesn't say this in Tanya, but this is me internalizing it in Tanya. So how often, that's my question, how often does it have to happen? So you can have a person that it happens on a regular basis. This guy is a wild, tough person who always screams at people and you're always afraid of him. This is the way I'm translating, because his animal soul controls his godly soul. But you can have a guy, it happens once in 10 years, the guy loses himself. So how often is he wicked? It depends on the person. There could be two different people that are constantly, every day, every minute being wicked, and there's people who happen once in a while. So the variety could be very different. Now, it also not differentiate what kind of wickedness the person's doing too, which means there's maybe much more heinous crimes and lesser, not such terrible crimes. It's selfish, it's gluttonous, but what's the level, what's the degree of his animal soul controlling himself, and how bad is it? How much suffering is he bringing to other people? So yes, there's some people that when we say wicked in our case, it means they're hiding godliness, right? The new words in Tanya, the inner struggle, selfishness. There's some people that we're saying that the animal souls control the godly soul, but it's a drop. It's a tiny drop. He's wicked. He's allowing his animal soul to control his godly soul, but it's a tiny little bit that it's happening. So first of all, the severity of what he's doing is just a little tiny thing. And we'll get into very interesting, what do I mean by a little bit? What's the difference between a little kind of bad thing or a big kind of bad thing? Like you would say, we learned that there's 3 ways the soul expresses itself in the body. There is the thought, the speech, and the action. So you might say active wickedness. He did an action. What's worse? Or I just thought a bad thought in my mind. Which one's worse? We'll actually see, not so simple. But how far are you speaking bad things? Right? You're saying bad things about other people, you're causing strife, and you're a terrible hurting people with your mouth. Are you hurting people with your actions? So he says there's some people that it's not major bad and it's not very frequent, but the fact is his animal soul's control of his godly soul sometimes could be happens once a year, right? Like I'm saying, the guy who's screaming who answers very rudely back to other people happens once a year, but it happens. It does happen. So his animal soul does sometimes, very infrequent, but sometimes. There's some people that only once in a while the guy will lose himself and his animal soul will take over the godly soul. The kovish is and he'll become boss over the body. The body's going to do what I want, but it won't happen often. It happens once a year. I think an alcoholic's a good case too. The guy he loses himself, but how often are you a guy that lose yourself in a drink? You get crazy, shicker drunk and lose yourself and be destructive. When does it happen? Once a year? Or every day? Does it happen every day? Does it happen breakfast, lunch, and supper? How often is your animal soul controlling your body? So some guys, it only happens once a year, once in 10 years. And even when it happens, it only happens a little bit. It doesn't go all the way out. Only a little bit does he control. Does he allow his animal soul to just take over the body? Like, you're in control. Forget about the godly soul. Go do whatever you want now. The godly soul is now submissive to the animal soul. So remember, there's 3 garments: thought, speech, and action. How far does he go? Does he get to all 3? He's making your thought, speech, and action totally in, or maybe just your thought, maybe just your action, maybe just your speech, maybe one of them, maybe 2 of them. How far? So how often and how far is the person a wicked person? The haynu. So for example, how could it be ma'aseh about in action? It could be very infrequent. He gets an action avera. Last says averas kales v'lei chamuras chas v'shalom, to do a little avera. Stole a little thing. He saw a pen and he picked it up and he took it, and he let his ego get part of him. I don't know, in business there was a few dollar transaction that he should have said something, he didn't say something. Little tiny, it's not a major. I mean, it's it's like he didn't think about it much, but his animal soul got control of him at that moment. Maybe it could happen, or the other option that it could be speech. So let's say real mean speech could be really to make a fight between 2 people and have them hate each other and spread like good gossip, and that's like your animal soul is now totally in control of your body. But like a little one there's something called avak lashon hara. It's not full on slander, but you're causing Like one of the examples is if you know someone else will speak bad about someone, you'll speak good, and then that'll make that person speak bad. So there's ways, like you say, someone says somebody's name, you're like, don't talk to me about that guy. You haven't said anything maybe directly straight out, that person's bad, but you said something bad. Like Tzanis or making fun of people, and these things. So you didn't like right out do a blatant lie or blatant terrible stuff, but you did partake at that moment. Yeah. So your wickedness is not full on terrible wicked, but it's doing it just in speech, and it's also doing it very slightly because you're not that kind of guy. You're really a very good person, but a little bit your animal could take over your godly soul and control the body. Or just in thought, maybe you didn't say anything bad, you didn't do anything bad, but you thought something bad. I said something very interesting. The person might say that you might think that the thought is actually the least of all the problems. I didn't do anything to anyone. I didn't even say anything to anyone. I just thought something bad in my own head. Nobody even knows. That's the amazing thing about nobody knows what you're thinking. So it's just in my head. Nobody has any clue to know what it is that I'm thinking. So he says you should know for the soul, in a way, the brain is a much bigger problem because it's much more part of who you are. Your brain makes up, your perception is everything. And that impacts your identity. So in a sense, when you do an act on an Aveira, you stole something, let's say you stole a pen or something, whatever, you took something you shouldn't, a little thing, you didn't really think about it. You moved on, you did something wrong, it was bad, you shouldn't have done it. But when you think about something, it actually affects and changes who you are. So it's worse. Hakashim Aveira, it can actually be worse. So the brain thinking about things, and he tells you example, you're not even thinking that how am I going to figure out how to do this in my head? You're thinking something you shouldn't think. A male and a female having intimacy. In general, not that you're the one doing it, not that you're doing adultery in your mind even. You're watching, I would say this is a big problem with movies, like rated R, it's a prohibition in the Torah to not just do a sin, but and not just to speak about a sin, but in your mind, it's an interesting law, you're not allowed to think about, you're not allowed to see other people having intimacy, and you're not allowed to even think about it in your mind. And what's the prohibition from? He actually quotes the prohibition. Because someone who, it says in the Torah, you should protect yourself from anything bad. Because if you think about something by day, you're going to act on it at night. So in other words, the things, the lusts and desires that the animal soul has, the more you think about it, the more chances are that you're going to act on it. And therefore, it's a prohibition actually in the Torah to even think about things. So you might say the wicked person, he's an okay guy. He doesn't act on it. He doesn't speak about it, but his mind is full of it. No. The Torah prohibited that your mind should be full of it. That's not healthy. In a sense, it's worse because it's contaminating you. It's really contaminating. Sometimes in a way, you do something quick, you don't think about it, it's not contaminating you. Your mind is really contaminating. In a way, like if you eat something not kosher, God forbid, it went in, it went out, and it's definitely a sin and so on. But if you thought about something that's prohibited, it could affect you. You could remember 20 years down the road that thing that you're not allowed to watch or think about. Or even, as we spoke about in the other lesson, that God believes in potential is a very big thing. So it's not just a violation to violate the 365 commandments, but it's a violation not to do the 240 positive commandments because you're not living up to your potential. Or it's time to learn Torah. You had a class, and it's the time that you're supposed to learn, and you had the ability to learn, but finally, instead he just wastes his time. He does something else that's not learning Torah. So you're not living up to your potential. God created you, put in this world today to live up to your potential, and you didn't do it. Like it says in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, finally, by somebody who's up at night and walks during the way, he has to learn. The time where a Jew, you were supposed to learn Torah, you didn't learn up to your potential. That's a sin. That means that you didn't do it because your animal soul took control. So you're supposed to go somewhere your animal soul wanted to, your godly soul wanted to do it, and your animal soul won at that moment. But again, it's a small little bit he's wicked. In other words, the wicked only took control very little, but he's still acting like a Rasha at the time, because what's the difference? A Rasha is someone who allows his
who's hiding God. The wicked person is the one who allows his animal soul to win. And the tzaddik is someone that the opposite, that the godly soul. And again, we're talking about the two extremes. We didn't hit the middle guy. That's going to be tomorrow's class. At that moment, that the person is allowing his animal soul to take the keys, get in the car, and drive his body, become the driver of his body. At that moment, the fact is that doesn't matter how small it is, and it doesn't matter how far it went. The fact is, what happened here is the animal soul took control of whatever part of the body it took control of at that moment. It hid godliness, it pushed away the godly soul, and it said, I'm taking over here, this is my place, and he won. And he won the war. He won the boxing match, he won round one, or he won, he won part of the round. And he took control and he took over the body. At that moment that we allow in any shape or form the animal soul to win over the godly soul, that moment we're acting like a rasha, we're acting like a wicked person. That the evil in his heart won, the animalistic, selfish, hidden God, not opposite of translucent, took over, won, dressed up in your body, and is causing you to sin and is making you impure. It's making you, the person, impure. Now, 2 minutes later, we know what's going to happen. Then the good is going to win over back. He got knocked down, the good's going to get up. The kiss of his godly soul, you know what's going to happen? He's going to regret. He's going to regret what he did. How many times does this happen, right? The guy who screamed at the other person, he calmed down. A day later, an hour later, 2 minutes later, whatever kind of, again, so a more of a wicked person, more of a person whose animal soul is controlled, might not calm down for a week, for 2 years. Or might never calm down. We'll learn about that soon. But the guy who's a sensitive person just for a moment allowed himself to become wicked, allowed the animal soul to take over, he often has a lot of regrets in his life, right? Like everyone has regrets. Why did I say this? Why did I do this? Why was I so self-centered at the moment? And he asks forgiveness from God, right? Just like the alcoholic who got drunk again, goes back to his spouse and he says, I'm sorry, I really regret what I did. We ask God, we say, God, we didn't mean for the animal soul that moment to take over, and God will forgive you. God, again and again and again and again and again and again, if he really regrets with the right kind of tshuva, returns as he's supposed to. We learned this in our class, how you do tshuva. It's a lengthy 10 chapters of how a person's supposed to do tshuva. We learned it's the 3 R's, regret, return, and resolve, right? Really not to do it again. Like when someone does something wrong, he tells his spouse or his friend, the person he hurts, he's like, I know what I did. I regret what I did. I'm telling you it's wrong, and I'm going to resolve, and I'm never going to do it again. So when we return as we should, based on the advice from the rabbis on how one should return. With the 3 ways of forms of kapara forgiveness, right? Yom Kippur forgives, and you're asking forgiveness. Rabbi Shmuel would learn, depending on what the sin is, which we'll learn about when we get to class over there. I'd like to explain elsewhere, but the bottom line is, what happens is the guy falls. I want to say like all of us do, but then I'm saying we're all Russias, but we're going to see tomorrow that that there's the middle guy. But when you fall, you're wicked because you allowed your animal soul to win. He won, he took over. He's in charge of the car. He took over, he's driving the car now. So, but obviously what happens, regrets. So regret happens. And anyone who has done anything bad in their life very often has had regret. But we explain the guy who it's once in a while and it's only a little bit, but there's many levels. There's someone who the evil is much more prevailing, much stronger, much more powerful, much more in control. He gets dressed up in the person, his animal soul took control of all 3 ways that the soul can express itself in the body. In his mind, in his speech, he thinks like an animal, he talks like an animal, and he acts like an animal. Total control of the person's walking filled with animalistic, selfish tendencies that are opposite Hashem. It could be that he does very severe sins. And he happens all the time. So, constant, this is like an addict who's really falling, who's following into the urges, the animalistic desires and urges that he has. He's challenged and he's constantly falling down. However, even this guy, and you see this by addicts, by people who hurt their lives or people who are destroying their lives, in between, when they wake up from whatever state they're in, right? They have tremendous remorse. They feel terrible for what they did. When time is hard. So even though he's so full of it, so full, the animal so control the body, but then he has that moment which he gets sober or he wakes up from his selfishness. What did I just tell my wife? What did I just tell my kids? Even someone who constantly says it, because why does he regret it? Because he also has the godly soul in him, even though his animal soul is so controlled. But every moment the godly soul gets to breathe again for a moment, takes a breath, and he says, "What did you do, you idiot?" And he says, "I'm sorry, I feel so bad what I did." Because the animal soul wins a little bit the boxing match that's going on. It's just it's just not strong enough to actually win the fight. But he's constantly, the fight's going on. And he's constantly, like the example in yeshiva is with getting up in the morning on time for learning, getting to shul on time for davening. Like it's a struggle every morning. Especially when you're a teenager in yeshiva, that's why one of the biggest struggles is getting up on time for the learning schedule. And it's every morning. It's the godly soul says, "Get up, go daven, Hashem's waiting for you. Or go hear Hashem's greatness." And the animal says, "Are you kidding? I could sleep a bagel. I could do a donut. I could do 12 hours, 24 hours." And that's a struggle between the godly soul and the animal soul. So there's some people jump out of bed, boom. Godly soul's in control with regard to the morning routine. The other one is the animal soul's in control, but then he regrets it. He comes in and, why did I miss this great class? And now my day's so horrible. And then he, even someone that constantly sleeps in every day, he probably regrets it every morning. He comes an hour too late and he regrets it. Oh, I missed the birthday party for my wife. I missed my kid's thing, whatever it is. But he's not, so this guy who's constantly acting on his animal soul, he doesn't have enough to actually win. He's dealing with it constantly. He doesn't have enough to actually win. A little bit, he gets a breath of fresh air. The godly soul wins a little bit, then he regrets and he returns, but it goes right back to where he was. He can't get away. Finish, win the animal soul and move. He can't. He's not doing it. This is the rabbi say. He says wicked people are full of regret. People who are full of wickedness are full of regret. Because every day they wake up and they, what did I do? But I don't have the motivation and the discipline to get out of it. But I'm constantly full of regret because I still have a godly soul, and it constantly says, what are you doing? Like someone's maybe some of these people that are in the businesses that are not, so nice or so good. So maybe some finances which you're convincing people to invest in stuff that's not good for them. You get so caught up in it, but every once in a while you maybe ask yourself, why am I doing this to people? Like you're caught up in the drug culture or in the gang culture, whatever it is. But once in a while, even the guy in the gang culture says, it's crazy. Why can't I change my life? But I can't. I keep on getting caught up, and my animal soul's in control of my body. That's most wicked people are always regretting their actions. They all has a little bit of good that's there. So even the real wicked guys that are totally their animals control of their godly soul, they're hiding Hashem's control of their body and their body, they're still constantly feeling like they want to return to Hashem. They're sinning. Again, it could be one of the three things, but then they regret it. It could be all three they're wicked, but then they regret it. They come back and they say, why am I doing this? They're full of that remorse that they're feeling constantly. So you have a guy who does it once a year, once in 10 years, once in a while, only a little bit. Some people, it's much more bigger problems. And by the way, there could be sometimes one sin that's your problem, right? An addict could be only have one. Everything in life is perfect. That one area in life, I have an issue. My animal soul is in control of me of this specific thing, and I can't control it right over here. And he's always regretting his actions. But now we're going to talk about, till now we spoke about the person who regrets it. The non-perfect wicked person, because he always has the good comes back, which is most people. Well, and which is like the tzaddik who's not perfect. But what about the perfectly wicked person? So just like by the tzaddik, we said there was a perfectly tzaddik, and that's almost impossible to reach. Very, very few people at that level. The same thing is true on the other spectrum on the other side. To be a perfectly wicked person, what would be the identity of that person?
he has no remorse. His animal soul has completely taken over his godly soul. And so much so that he never even regrets his action. And that's almost nobody. That's literally almost nobody. You're not going to have a person like that. But it's theoretical. It's the most extreme human being could be in wickedness possible. You know what I'm thinking? You see the jail sometimes, the people on death row, and you speak to them, and you ask them, do you have remorse? You know, maybe there could be a guy who says, I don't care, I killed 10 people and I have no problem. You know, like, I don't feel any remorse. Very unlikely. Even such people would have remorse. But, you know, but maybe there could be this identity. Someone, but that possibility, at least someone who doesn't even ever feel any regret. I'm bad, I like being bad, I'm happy I'm bad, and I hurt all these people, and I don't care. The gets no awakening. No, the godly soul never even shows its face. It's so nothing that it's not even there. Like, he convinced the godly soul to become, kicked him out. I don't think you could transform him. The godly soul could transform the wicked soul. The wicked soul can't transform. You basically totally kicking him out of the body. Nikar Rasha Viraloi. He's considered a wicked person that's perfectly wicked, that only knows evil. The only thing left in this body of a person is this evil, wicked, self-centered, selfish, animalistic soul that's total in control. He took so much control over it that he departed from him. The godly soul left the body. So where is it? So where's the godly soul? So it's hovering. There's nowhere to live. You didn't let him in. He's not in the boxing match. You kicked him out of the boxing. He's out of the ring. He's standing on the side of the ring. The godly soul in this person, which is almost impossible to have, unlikely person, is literally hovering above the person. He's there, but he's like on top of the boxing. He's outside, hanging onto the roof of the car. He's not in the car. He's not there because you kicked him out. The wickedness kicked him out. But here's something fascinating, how he's going to end actually, again, this is the Parak Tanya, the chapter of Tanya describing the wicked person. But he ends with something amazing. He says, even this terrible person, which is so unlikely, almost impossible to have a guy who doesn't regret what he does. Such a person, he still has the godly soul. It's just hovering on him. And therefore, to prove it, that it's still there, the rabbis, to show you, I'm going to prove, the rabbis say, if there's 10 Jews in a room, God's presence is there. Because there's 10 godly souls in that room. So you could have 10 wicked people on the level of this last wicked person, which is almost impossible to have. You could have them with a minion. Hashem's there because they still have a godly soul. It's hovering over there. It's amazing. It's an amazing idea. So even this guy, he still has an neshama. He was created. Like I like to say, every person was created perfect by God. Original packaging, God put in an animal soul and a godly soul. This guy grew up whatever lifestyle, the nurture with his nature, with his not overcoming his struggle, just going for bad, has led him in a life that the godly soul is just hovering above the body, but it's still there. It's amazing that it's still there. That's a fascinating description of the Rasha, the wicked person. So it could be once in a while. It could actually be on something specific. That's where his challenge is. So he's wicked in this one thing. This is my problem. This is my thing, which I'm wicked in. But depends on the level wicked. It could be all the time. It could be barely once in a lifetime. It could be once in 10 years, once in a year. It could be very serious, heinous crime. It could be not such a heinous crime, right? It could be, you only allowed him into the thought or the speech or the action. You only allowed him in a little bit. It really depends on the purpose. You could have many, many levels, just like on a tzaddik, you could have so many levels. On a wicked person too, you could have a tremendous amount of levels. That is today's Tanya, my friends. Any questions or comments on the fascinating approach to the Rosh?
Question.
Yes, Stephen.
What happened?
Sorry, 1 second. So Harvey, go. Harvey, go ahead. I can't hear you, Harvey. Try again, please. I can't hear. I'm sorry. Anybody understand what Harvey's saying?
Banani?
A Beinoni, yes. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Excellent. The Beinoni is so we're setting the stage here. We're describing a perfectly perfect person, tzaddik, which almost none of us could be, and the Rasha, which hopefully none of us are. And then we're going to get to the middle guy. That's going to be tomorrow. The Beinoni is going to be a great question. The Beinoni is going to discuss tomorrow. I heard Rabbi Tal bring up an idea. Why are we even talking about these extreme cases? Why are we talking about the tzaddik, right? That's so perfectly perfect. Why is it relevant to us to know that this guy exists? If we're never going to be there, why this book is for the regular people? Why are you bringing up the tzaddik level in there?
To aspire to, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, Alan, I would agree with that statement. Yeah, so you should know that it exists. You should know that in some potential, you have the ability. Hang on, Steve, 1 second. You have the ability to reach that level. You should know that it exists within you. You should know that it exists within you and aspire to it. Maybe even you're never going to reach it, but you should know that it exists. You should also know where you are. So maybe it could be humbling also, or it could be empowering. It could be humbling because you think you're such a big tzaddik. You're not a tzaddik. This is what a tzaddik is. Are you kidding? So when you start getting a little bit of an ego, it could be very good to know this is where you're going. This is where you have to go. The destination is very, very, very high and very far. Keep on climbing. You're nowhere near where you can reach in life. On the other hand, maybe in a sense, he'll say, look, Hashem keeps giving me challenges. And maybe God really thinks I could reach that level. Maybe I could climb it. You should know that it's there. So it's empowering and it's also humbling at the same time. Yeah. Thank you, Al. That was a great answer. All right, Stephen's been waiting. Go ahead, Stephen. What is your question or comment?
What about the individual that is evil and has no remorse, but they have they're mentally challenged, whether they be bipolar or some other psychiatric? It's almost like their mind can't comprehend between good and evil.
We are not speaking about medical sicknesses in our class. We're not speaking about medical sicknesses in our class. A person with medical sicknesses should go to a doctor, and the doctor will prescribe medication for him to help him out. We're not speaking about that. Tanya is the medical book for the person dealing with the regular struggles between the animal soul and the godly soul, not between medical ailments. It's a great question. It's an excellent question. Ira and I have been talking about it. There's not an do not come to the Tanya class to remedy. Don't use Tanya to remedy a imbalance, a chemical imbalance. It's not going to help you. Tanya is not going to help you with the chemical imbalance. You go to a doctor, and the doctor will tell you what medication you need to take in order to deal with what you're dealing with. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the regular life, normal struggles that each and every one of us have.
Thank you.
I want to say one statement on one thing, just some thoughts on that idea, just of the challenges that we face. Right? The challenges we face each and every day. That, remember, we learned that the world was created by darkness. With the Klippas Noiga, most of the world, God hid himself, right? And did not put it to reveal godly soul. Most of the world we deal with is created with the animal soul. And we learned Tanya that day. Because of that, a lot of times evil will succeed and will be in control. And it will not be until Mashiach's coming when Bila Hamavas L'Netzach Hashem will remove the hiddenness of Hashem, whether it be in physical elements or the struggle of the animal soul or the success of evil in the world. That is part of being in exile, is living in this life of hidden Hashem's, hiding himself, which is why we have to struggle within ourselves. That's why we have to struggle within the world. We're living in a world with Hashem's hidden, and we deal with these struggles that we have. So it could be a biological struggle. It could be a Tanya struggle, a spiritual struggle that you're having. If it's a biological struggle, it's created by Hashem, but it's not remedied through Tanya. It's remedied through going to the doctor. That's the way to deal with it. Tanya is discussing the regular fight that's within each and every one of us that we need to deal with. Yeah, I hope that was clear. I think that was some of the epiphany, as I said in Moda'ani this morning. And I'm like, you know what? Bila, it came to my mind, just Bila Hamavas L'Netzach, that this is life. This is life in exile. We have a lot of challenges and difficulties because Hashem hid himself in this world, which is why there's suffering and difficulties, is because the world has this darkness because Hashem hid himself in our world. And our job is to deal with this world and elevate it, see somebody struggling, help him out, do a mitzvah for someone, do something good. The world's a dark place and we need to, that's our job, is to change it and try to make it the best place it could be. You're welcome. Pleasure. Anybody else have any questions or comments on today's Tanya? We good? Yeah? Okay.
Everyone have a great day.
Thank you all for joining me. Anyone else? Anyone want to say something? No?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're
Thank
very,
you.
very welcome. We'll continue tomorrow. We'll learn about the struggle that's within each and every one of us.
תודה רבה, רבי.
Thank you,
בבקשה.
Rabbi. Thank you. Call to.
Thanks for joining us, Shuki. תודה רבה.
Our pleasure. My pleasure to be with you guys. Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Be well. Be well, Mitchell.
Take care. You too. All the best. Take care.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you,
Take care.
Rabbi.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.